Hey friends, how's it going? Ash here, welcome back to Gents. So obviously on this channel we talk about fragrances every single day in one way, shape, or form. And the thing with fragrances is ultimately the smell, right? I mean, the presentation makes a difference, the brand name for some people makes a difference, but ultimately it's about the smell. So I figured, why not talk about smells, but not fragrance smells? So that's what we're doing. A little while back, I asked you guys on the community tab of the YouTube channel, what are some weird smells that you actually really enjoy? And if you want to take part in a future video like this, then check out the community tab of the YouTube channel. I have a question up there typically that changes about once a week. So you can leave your comment there and maybe be in a future video and also upvote other people's comments. In case you're kind of unaware of where I'm going with this, I'll give you a couple examples. One of my wife's favorite smells ever, period, is the smell of fresh cut grass. More specifically, that first lawn cutting of the year. So when you can drive down the road with your windows down, or if you have a convertible, the top down, and it's just starting to edge into spring and people are out there mowing their yards and it kind of like fills up the air. That smell. One that I love personally is the smell of an old house. I know it sounds kind of weird. Like an old wooden house where you go in and there's just history to it. It has a very particular smell when you go into an old-timey house. And I'm not saying that it's run down or anything like that, but just by the nature of its age, it has a very particular scent and I really like it. You could also compare it to like the smell of an old library or something, old books, you know, that kind of scent profile. I dig it. So things like that, things where there's a very noticeable particular smell to something that some people wouldn't like that you do. I have some of your answers here that we're gonna go over. And there are a lot more on that topic, which is still on the community tab, so feel free to check that out. First one comes to us from Austin Dunham Fit, who has a channel on YouTube. Feel free to check that out. Coffee mixed with the light cigarette smell reminds me of my grandparents when I was young. And this is something that came up a bunch of different times, like a cigarette smell with coffee or at a diner. For a lot of people, that's like a locked in memory, a scent memory. So something like that, to one person you might say, and they go, oh, it sounds gross, man. Coffee and cigarettes, or a diner and cigarettes, like, oh. But to other people, it like flips a switch in their brain and brings them back to a different time in their life or a happy memory they have. And a lot of times that's what's going on with these. Smell can really, really powerfully affect the way you feel. Maybe in a not so positive way, you could think of like the smell of an ex. Like if you had an ex who wore a particular fragrance or something like that, a particular perfume, and they always wore it, so you got to the point where when you smelled that, you immediately associated it with them. You could go years without smelling that, and then when you do, it'll be like, boom. You'll just be immediately flooded with emotion, like, oh my God, oh no. A sudden depression where there was none. But thankfully here, we're talking happy memories. Next, we got one from Jared Steele 6229 who says, I love the smell of fallen leaves in a chilly breeze. The smell of fall/autumn. Walking through a forested area in late September, early October smells amazing. The woodiness, dampness, and brittle leaves. Don't even know if I'm expressing it correctly. It's almost intoxicating to me. This is another one that came up a bunch. That feeling of like the changing of seasons, where you can almost feel it in your bones when you step outside and you smell and you get that particular waft on the air. I myself am a huge fan of this time of year. Like you said, September, October, late October, because that's where we're getting into just a lot of good stuff. Changing of the seasons looks beautiful around here where I'm surrounded by mountains. Just the overall feeling in the air. And of course, when we're talking late October, that's horror movie season. I'm about that life. Nubs Fragrances is next, and he's on TikTok and YouTube also. Just kind of started up, so show him some love. Nubs, big nubs. I love the smell of fireworks. That sulfur smell takes me back to being a kid, and the feeling of setting off fireworks with friends and family. Love it. This one did not come up as much, but it is definitely a scent that if you've been around it, you know what it is. Now, fireworks are very dangerous, so do be careful. Growing up in the South, occasionally I would find myself somewhere, which I guess it's not just in the South, I should say. everywhere, but I would find myself in situations where fireworks were being launched and maybe not in the safest of ways. You'd be like, hey man, are you sure these fireworks are up to code here? We're good, this is safe? Oh yeah, no problem, dude. You just sit the tube on the ground, you put in the shell, and it goes in the sky. What could go wrong? All of a sudden, the tube goes wobble, wobble. Just shooting a friggin' shell into a group of people. Nice. But it does have a very particular smell. And most often, if fireworks are being shot off, it's because something's being celebrated, which means typically people are in a pretty good mood. Again, can kind of draw a little line there and link up in your brain and you associate it with happy feelings. Camille7325 says, it's a vivid memory from my childhood, the smell of cassette tapes. My grandmother made an entire tape library for her church and had an entire room dedicated to it. Whatever it was that made up the tape film, I absolutely love that smell. Smells very similar to myrrh, I believe. This one, much more unique, the smell of cassette tapes. I don't know that I myself ever smelled a cassette tape in an entire room dedicated to cassette tapes. I'm assuming when you say cassette tape, you mean an audio cassette tape, not a VHS cassette tape. Yeah. It got me thinking for a second, is there a fragrance like that? And I don't think that there is. Xyrena has a couple of interesting fragrances. Xyrena spelled X-Y-R-E-N-A. They have one that's based off of like Polaroids, the smell of Polaroids. I don't know if that would get you too close because like I said, I don't remember myself the smell of cassette tapes. It'd be pretty difficult to be like, cassette tape, Polaroid. It's a decent bet. You could get the Polaroid fragrance, but maybe worth checking out. I don't know. Donald Janina Varro says, my grandparents had a freezer in their garage. I love that open door freezer smell mixed with the garage smells. Grandpa was a mechanic, so his garage had all the car smells. Plastic, rubber, gas, oil, antifreeze, WD-40, etc. So those in and of themselves, I've heard people say, of course, that they like the smell of gas. Like when you're pumping gas, don't huff it, but the smell of gas, a lot of people like that. Plastic, rubber, in different ways, you know, maybe people like those. Antifreeze is like really sweet, don't drink that. But this is a full note breakdown that you're giving us. Oh yes, fragrance has notes of open door, freezer, WD-40, antifreeze, gas, oil. Magnificent. But I do kind of get what you're saying there because my grandfather actually repaired TVs on my mom's side. And so in his house, there was like the basement area had been converted into a TV repair shop. And so it had a really interesting scent profile when you went down there, you know? It had like kind of that mustiness from a basement with like old carpet, you know, like small bits of welding equipment and, well, maybe it's not welding equipment exactly. It's, I'm completely blanking on it. But he had a lot of different things going on down there, a lot of different smells. And so not the exact same, but I completely get where you're coming from because my uncle also worked on cars and he had a car garage and actually, yeah, I do get completely where you're coming from. Why did it take me so long to like draw this conclusion? Like I'm sitting here remembering smells myself now through your smells. Gort1683 says the smell of when it rains while it's still hot outside. This one, we all know. The smell of rain. It's something that people have tried to capture in fragrances for forever, and rarely ever is it done to where you smell it and you go, oh, you nailed it. Usually it turns into just kind of like a musky, clean thing. But like the smell of the earth after the rain, the smell of asphalt after rain, the smell of anything after rain, that kind of petrichor smell, everyone loves it. Just in different kind of ways, you know, different specifics of the petrichor. And I'm sure that's just kind of naturally ingrained to an extent, you know, like the rain coming down and giving everything life. So when you smell it, you're just like, ah, nice. Crowned High Def says, love the smell of old books, like encyclopedias in the closet or the library where the older books are. Also love the smell of tomato plants. Yes, yes, both of these, yes. Tomato plants in the garden, very specific scent profile, but I really, really like it. Just the way that it comes across, it's like, I don't know, just it puts you in a positive frame of mind, for me anyway. And then old books, I kind of talked about that before. That smell, an old closet in an old library, in an old house, an old building. Yeah, we're on the same page. Up next, the Hispanic Jukebox says, I've always loved the smell of burning wood when it's crisp and clear outside and cool or cold. Just reminds me of the holidays, especially as a kid. Yeah, it hits a certain way, right? Like the smell of a fire, whether we're talking outside like a campfire, especially when it's getting cooler outside, or when you're inside around the holidays and you've got a nice fire going in a fireplace. It just hits a certain kind of way, especially when you're younger. When you're a kid, just the whole feeling of the holidays, I think the fire really drives that home. It's a very particular scent. And if you have made memories around something like that, then every time you smell it as you get older, it like takes you back for a split second. Oh, yeah. I'm not gonna be able to pronounce this. I don't even know how to start. Gaia Quilin Dependiente 8763. I'm sorry. The smell of the air and salty water when you're near the coast. Quite unique, but reminds me of happy and sunny days. Yes. You do want to have that nicer smell though, I think. When you get near the coast, depending on where you are, the scent can either be something that really, brightens your mood, puts a smile on your face, salty sea breeze, the sun shining down, nothing better than that. But then there is also, depending on where you are, just kind of a funky, gross smelling, rotting seaweed smell. So not that one, that's not quite so nice. I've smelled that before, not so pleasant. The other way, nice. Inyo GM1XN says the smell of winter. When it's cold outside, the air smells fresh, clean, cold. It's a bit hard to describe it, but when you breathe in and it stings a little in your nose and throat as if you had an Airwaves chewing gum. Oh yeah. Now we get all 4 seasons where I live. So, summer, really hot, and then winter, it gets cold, at least cold to us. Not cold if you're living up north, I'd imagine, but still cold enough. It gets below freezing. There is this briskness, like an all over briskness that you get the first time that you kind of go outside and it's below freezing, first time of the year, where it just tingles your nose, tingles your face. You can feel your face flushing. And when you breathe, yeah, you can trace like the air all the way down into your lungs. It's almost like a fragrance where you go nose blind to it. You know how certain fragrances, if you smell them too often or too much, or it's too strong, whatever, then you can go nose blind to it. It's still there, you're just not really smelling it anymore. It's almost like that when it's really cold outside. At first you're like, oh, it's so brisk. And then after a little while, you're like, I can't feel my face or my nose. And one extra one here, Alro Curry 12, who says high quality leather. Car interior, bags, wallets, doesn't matter. Of course, it's my favorite fragrance note as well. Yeah, for me, more specifically, probably the bags and the car interiors. Wallets, never sniffed on my wallet before. But I suppose if you had like a really nice, vintage leather wallet or something, you'd probably have a really good smell. It sounds weird. Like you're gonna get your wallet and just, Bags though, where they've got a little more heft to them, a little more air in there circulating around. When you open those up, a leather bag, yeah, you can get you a big whiff. And of course, car interiors, like a classic leather in there. Yeah. Reminds me of like the cars when I was a little kid, really little, that are no longer on the road, had like big plush seats in them, almost like fall into it like a lazy boy, like leather interiors like that. And then also if you have like a high-end car nowadays with a really nice leather interior, you have some nice scents there. Leather in general though, that's something that obviously people have dug forever, which is why it is so popular in fragrances as well, like you said. So there we go, some notes, some things, some fragrances that aren't fragrances that you guys like to smell. It's pretty fun. I need to do some more things like this where we're not talking just fragrances, but things that have a smell, for better or worse. Thank you guys for hanging with me here. Thank you everyone that took part in this. Stay safe out there, guys. I'll see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys later.